hope you can all hear me okay. My name's William Baker. I'm the Energy Advice Development Lead at Citizens Advice, which is a large advice provider in the UK. This session, we're going to be talking about retrofit and the important role retrofit can play in tackling energy poverty. It's part of a whole week of events on the theme of making decarbonisation fair. Run by the Engager Cost Network, the Fuel Poverty Research Network, of whom I'm also a trustee, the Centre for Environmental and Sustainability Research at Lisbon University, and DECO, Portuguese consumer organisation. Some of you might know that the original intention was to hold this conference in Lisbon. So that's why we have a number of Lisbon organisations very much involved in the conference. I've got a panel of 5 speakers with me, and I have to apologise for my pronunciation, but I'll give it a stab. We have Dr. Inigo Antapara from the University of the Basque Country, Miguel Macias Sequeira from SENSE and the Nova School of Science and Technology, Pablo Hernandez Cruz from also from the University of the Basque Country, finally Roberto Barreira from Comillas Pontifical University, and Dr. Sarah Robertson from the RMIT University in Australia. Just to give everybody a sense of how we're going to run this session, I'll invite each of the panelists to talk about the research, and then we'll have a discussion about around the theme of the panel, the retrofit theme. We're keen to involve you all in this discussion, given that it is such an international group. Please, could you, if you have any questions for the panel, please put it in the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the Behoove screen. And we'll be drawing these throughout the session. So I'll be bringing them in as they come through. So please keep them coming throughout the whole session. But if you have any general comments, there's also a chat function, Hoover, which is also on the right side of the screen. So, please feel free to use that as well. And finally, just also feel free to tweet and share on social media using the hashtag #MakingDecarbFair. So, as I said, this theme is very much focusing on retrofit, and I think this is one of the most direct ways that decarbonisation is going to affect households, have a direct impact on households. It's how they heat their homes, how they and how they insulate their homes. And it's given, many countries now have adopted net zero policies. And I know in the UK, the implications are quite it's massive. We're talking about putting low carbon by the mid-20s, putting low carbon heating systems in 20,000 households a week. But of course, also retrofit can make a very important long-term sustainable solution to energy poverty, and it's often seen as centerfold in policies to tackle energy poverty, although of course it's not the only one. So I think we should be a really interesting discussion. I'll ask our first speaker to introduce his presentation. Dr. Inigo Antapara, who's an assistant professor at the University of the Basque Country. His current research interests are around energy poverty, including public energy poverty policies, particularly at the municipal level, the effects of energy poverty on health. He's also worked at Ala Kabide, which is a Basque social housing company, planning the renovation of the building stock. And I think he's going to be talking about this research on relates to that social housing provider. So Inigo, please go ahead.
Thanks Williams, and thanks to Engager, and thanks and all the organizers for the opportunity to present this work here. Many thanks to Alokabide and to the Basque government also, and I hope to have a fruitful discussion with all the people around. Well, I assume that everybody has seen my presentation. No, it's a joke. So I will summarize some of the results. This work is based on the proposals sent to the Carbon Fund for a Sustainable Economy. It's called in Spanish Proyecto Clima, and it's the tool used by the Spanish government for the carbon market. So the main ideas of my work, it's due to the Spanish model of social housing. One of the requirements usually is the income. Low-income households are overrepresented among the tenants. So this is the first idea. And the second idea, for the proposal, I made some assumptions, and they are mainly based on the energy audits carried out by Pablo in the building stock of Alokabide. What the energy audit showed was that there is a gap between the theoretical performance of the buildings and the actual energy consumption by the tenants. This gap is only when we take into account the heating, not for domestic hot water. And so in heating, we have an underconsumption. These are the two main ideas, the low-income household, and as a result, the underconsumption in the buildings. So in this Proyecto Clima, two projects were included. Those two projects were social thermal system renovations for the production of domestic hot water. So for those two projects, the underconsumption has no effect. But the third project submitted to the Proyecto Clima was a renovation project, and in this one, we assume that underconsumption has to occur. So this proposal was submitted 2 years ago and was approved in January this year. So no verification of the emission has been carried out. And the conclusions of the work is that if we assume that underconsumption is occurring, then the policy recommendation should be that for the accounting of CO2 emissions reduction, for the baseline scenario, the ex-ante calculation, it should be the recommendation is to make it on the basis of theoretical calculation. It's already done in France with the white certificate, so it's really not new. And the second one is that if we assume that low-income tenants are under-consuming after the renovation, we want to achieve the energy reduction. So it's a problem for the energy economic viability, but we can, if we produce the energy through fossil fuels, then we can't achieve decarbonization of that energy consumed. That is.
Thank you, Inigo. I think your focus on underconsumption really drives home the really important aspect of energy poverty that many consumers don't consume nearly enough energy to meet their heating and other energy needs. And it's a very knotty issue in the context of decarbonisation. We're next going to hear from Miguel from SENSE at Lisbon University. Miguel joined SENSE in 2021, is researching ways to support the sustainable and inclusive energy transition at city scale. And his PhD thesis focuses on leveraging energy efficiency in traditional commerce by developing a framework and applying methods in several areas of Lisbon. Miguel's going to be talking about the GreenMenu website, which sounds really interesting. And tell us more, Miguel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the invitation in the first place. I believe so far it has been an amazing conference, and I hope this panel continues that trend. So my name is Miguel Macias Sequeira, and I'm an environmental engineer and a PhD student at SENSE in the area of energy and climate. My presentation talks about the GreenMenu, which is a one-stop shop platform that was developed last year during a European project that's called Project PASS 2020, and the long name is Pan-European Approach on Sustainable Heritage, Regeneration by Retrofitting Economy. This project was co-financed by the Climate Kick, and it ran for 4 months in the end of last year. It had partners from the Netherlands, from Slovenia, and from Portugal, and in Portugal was coordinated by Dr. João Pedro Gouveia at SENSE FC Nova. In the background of this project, we see that building renovation is key to address two challenges that are decarbonization and energy poverty mitigation, and that despite a number of policies that address these challenges, the progress has been slow, and in particular in Portugal, the rate of renovation is very slow compared with the values that would be desirable. And as we saw in the first day of the conference, Portugal is stricken by energy poverty and is one of the worst affected European countries. It was in this context that we developed the project PASS 2020 and created 3 country-specific one-stop shops, online one-stop shops, for Portugal, for Slovenia, and the Netherlands. The Dutch one already existed. And these one-stop shops are aimed at residential buildings. In Portugal, we decided to select iconic building typology from Lisbon. So one of the houses that we can see, older houses that you can see in Lisbon, that you can, if you had the chance to come here for this conference, you will see them live. But I hope that someday you can visit the historic neighborhoods of Lisbon and see these houses. And we selected this type of houses because it was something that people can recognize easily and can convey the message. So in the Menu de Renovação Verde, which is the name that we gave our GreenMenu in Portuguese, it's a free open access platform, and Portuguese citizens can find over 130 technical measures and tips, and these measures are divided by themes. We have measures on the building envelope, measures on heating and cooling, on local renewable energy generation, energy management, and also some measures focus on water saving and green features of buildings like green roofs or green facades. For each measure, we have a picture so that people can see easily what it's about. We have a description, also very clear, some pros and points of attention. And then very important, we have the specific financing mechanisms that are applicable to these measures. So if people want to install building insulation, they know that they have those financing mechanisms that they can find. And also the regulation and the conditions, so people know what they can do and what they cannot do. In total, we describe 12 financing schemes in our platform, and these are the ones that are currently active in Portugal. So from loans to grants, from the national scale to the municipal scale. And also we have information about how do people go from getting to know the measures to actually implement them. So what are the points of contact, what are the stakeholders that are involved in this process. So just to conclude, the GreenMenu tries to address some information gaps that are widespread in the Portuguese population, and its goal is to activate stakeholders so that we can actually accelerate building renovation in Portugal. Nevertheless, we know that information alone is not enough, especially online information, and that we have to reach people and cross the barrier to the real world and for actual impact. Thank you. I'm open to any questions later.
Thank you, Miguel. So our next speaker is Pablo Hernandez Cruz, who's a building energy efficiency engineer at the University of the Basque Country, a PhD student in energy efficiency in buildings, and a member of the ENADI research group of the University of the Basque Country. If you could tell me what ENADI stands for, I'd be very grateful. Pablo is also going to talk about some research that's been carrying out on the in the Basque and Alokabide in the Basque Country. Over to you, Pablo.
Okay, so thank you very much, William, for the introduction and to the Engage Action Group and to all the organization of the conference and for this opportunity to present our work. So as you have perfectly introduced myself, William, I'm a PhD student in energy efficiency of buildings in the University of the Basque Country, and I'm also a member of the ENADI research group, which is an energy efficiency in buildings research group. And I'm currently working at the Laboratory of Quality Control of Buildings of the Basque Country government. So the last past few years, we developed an energy audit of a comprehensive energy audit of the building stock or managed by this social public manager Alokabide of the Basque Country, as Inigo said before. And this energy audit was carried out within the Plan Zero Plana, which is a project that aims to refurbish the social housing stock managed by Alokabide, and also to reconsider and reinvent the management model so for social housing. So and nowadays the project we are ongoing is called BB18 and is focused on the management model. So what we are trying to do is to guarantee a minimum of 18 degrees in each of the dwellings of each building managed by Alokabide. So in this sense, we want to assure quality control indoor conditions for all the tenants, and also we want to improve the energy efficiency of the buildings. So usually energy poverty has been tried to tackle down by using aids in kind on a specific economic situations. But what we want, or what Alokabide wants to guarantee, is the same comfort level for all the building, and above of that, each one of the tenants is able to choose which level of comfort wants to have at their homes. So, and besides, what as I said before, these buildings are usually have, and Inigo said before, have a lot of low energy performance due to the low income, due to the low energy consumption of the tenants. So if we increase the energy consumption of the building, we will improve the energy efficiency, because we are talking about centralized heating and ventilation systems. So now currently we are working on a case study, a specific case study of a buildings placed here in the Basque Country, and we have some preliminary results, and they are showing us that we are able to fulfill or to reach 18 degrees in each of the dwellings. But also there's been a slight increase of the energy consumption by the tenants, but this is overcome with the increasement in the energy performance and in the level of comfort of the tenants. So that's that's it. Thank you very much, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Yes, sounds really interesting, and yes, we'll come back to how you've managed, how you ensure that 18-degree temperature and so on. But I mean, perhaps you can think about what that might mean in terms of their living standards, their quality of life, and so on. And we can come back to that later in the discussion. So I'm next going to introduce Roberto Barilla, who's a research assistant at the Chair of Energy and Poverty at the ICAI School of Engineering. This is a centre, a multidisciplinary centre that aims to find solutions to energy poverty by collaborating on research with energy companies and social partners. And his research focuses on household energy needs, housing energy retrofitting, and development of energy poverty indicators and energy policy proposals. I was really interested in your research, looking at the whole thing, Roberto, as having commissioned a number of studies attempting to do where we tried to do this at the UK level in terms of meeting, as we call it, fuel poverty targets, what that might mean in terms of programs required and the expenditure on them. So please tell us more about your work in Spain.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, William, for the introduction. And also thank you to all organizers. Yes, as William said, I'm Roberto Barilla from the Chair of Energy and Poverty. That it's a transdisciplinary center of work to engage all the stakeholders that should work on energy poverty, to fight energy poverty in a very broad and comprehensive way. We try to talk with the energy companies, but also with NGOs, social partners, and in particular, our research that I present today assesses the impact of different energy refurbishment strategies on the Spanish household thermal energy expenditure. We focus on heating, cooling, and domestic hot water. And with our results, we present different scenarios, and we characterize the current outline and variant 2030 scenario. And in particular, and the result shows us that if we do nothing, if we do nothing for the 2030 scenario, so we know we don't apply any measures, we will have an increase in the energy bills of 22% because of, for example, fossil fuel price increase. But if we choose different strategy, for example, if we choose a strategy of low-cost building retrofit, we can reach a 25% of decrease of the energy bills. So it's a very effective measures. And on the other hand, we choose a more cheap measure is that the replacement of thermal systems with more efficient ones, but with the same energy carrier, we will reach a 10% of reduction of energy expenditure. We're talking about average thermal energy expenditures. And from these results, we saw it's very urgent to take measures, especially in energy refurbishment in the residential sector in Spain. And as I said, the fossil fuel price increase can reduce or sometimes outside the positive effect of some measures. So we need also electrification of heating and domestic hot water services. And we point out as the low-cost building retrofit is the most effective measures, but also the most expensive one. So we have to prioritize the more vulnerable households. And also we took forward for, if we look forward for other research on that sense, and we want to carry out a sensitivity analysis and a climate change analysis for 2050. And also we want to include some consumption patterns and our energy poverty analysis to analyze which would be the impact of the measures of energy poverty in Spain. And finally, we're also working in an electricity expenditure analysis to include also improvement of household appliances and the impact that will be in energy expenditure, but also on energy poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roberto. And finally, we have Dr. Sarah Robertson, who's a research fellow at Centre for Urban Research at RMIT. And Sarah is a cultural and urban geographer who brings a relational perspective to human and non-human relations and sustainable interventions at residential scale in cities. And she's currently working on the Housing Energy Efficiency Transitions project, exploring the potential to scale up household retrofit in equitable ways. I think I'm really interested to hear Sarah's perspective, which is coming at it, I guess, from a different angle from our other speakers, which focus on the technical side of things. I think Sarah will be telling us a lot more about the lived experience of energy poverty and of retrofit and so on. So Sarah, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, William and Engager, for the opportunity to be here. So yeah, I guess the HEAT, or Housing Energy Efficiency Transitions project, is looking at both the sort of householder experience of retrofit in Australia and also in the UK, but predominantly in Australia, and also the supply side. So in the presentation, I gave an overview of retrofit and energy poverty, I guess the landscape in Australia, but we've been interviewing householders about their experience of retrofit, and we're still involved in doing those interviews, but we're up to about 120 interviews so far. And I guess the research is really emphasising how important qualitative research on the lived experience of retrofit is, because it helps build a picture of why a retrofit perhaps isn't being taken up by energy vulnerable and energy poor. And just, I guess, our findings support existing research in terms of the importance of trust in retrofit processes and the people involved, and also the sort of disaggregated and dispersed nature of retrofit provision. We're also finding the importance of thinking about retrofit more broadly or more relationally. So one of my colleagues is leading some work on retrofit practices as sort of extending beyond the four walls of the house and thinking about the spatial kind of implications and aspects of retrofit. So in Australia, sort of sheds, garages, campervans are some important spaces for the home, for households. And I guess we're finding this is tied to housing quality in households, pushing their homes to more comfortable spaces and making sort of outdoor, these sort of man sheds or sheds more comfortable spaces, but also inside, outside sort of lifestyles in Australia, and do-it-yourself cultures of home maintenance and improvement. And then I guess there are some interesting insights emerging about the lived experience of retrofit, the materials involved. So we're starting to do some work on the visibilities and invisibilities of low carbon retrofit that I guess complicate the meanings and value of retrofit for householders. So existing housing stock in Australia is overwhelmingly sort of poorly insulated, but as a sort of hidden material, householders are unsure about the benefits of insulation, or unsure whether their home has insulation in the first place. So we've found that this sort of retrofit know-how is really important, but it's not always a capability that householders have. And I guess related to this are issues around agency or opportunities to make changes to housing. And this is particularly the case with people who are renting as opposed to owner occupiers. So yeah, they're just some highlights from what's coming out so far.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So I'll start with putting questions to the panel. If I first perhaps ask Inigo and Pablo, you both focus on different approaches to addressing the problem of energy underconsumption by low-income households. So I wondered if you could just say a little bit about how you actually measure underconsumption. Does that implies there's a sort of some sort of notion of what average level of consumption might be, or what would be required to heat a home and so on? You know, because that's obviously quite important to the concept of energy poverty. And or just about, perhaps you could say a bit about, tenants' use of energy, and how that translates into things like low temperatures in their homes and the consequences of underconsumption for these households. So I don't know which of you would like to kick off on that.
I think this one is for Pablo because he did the energy audit. Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Inigo. So as Inigo said, we last 2 years we were carrying out an energy audit, really comprehensive energy audit of the more than 200 buildings that are managed by Alokabide. So we categorized these buildings and we chose 11 representative buildings, and we carried out this comprehensive audit in this building. So we work with real data consumption. Some of the buildings have bills, energy bills, only energy bills, but some other buildings do have a building management system, and we were able to monitorize all the consumptions: heating, domestic hot water, electricity, and even some of them, I think there were also available indoor temperature and humidity. So what we saw, the general conclusions of this study were that, as Inigo said before, there is a performance gap between the energy performance certificate, which is the theoretical consumption, and the real consumption of about 60%. This difference, this is both because of the low incomes levels of the buildings and also because of the low energy performance of the buildings. So there were also a significant difference between centralized buildings where the heating and domestic hot water installation are centralized, and individual buildings, because the centralized buildings have an energy performance, an overall energy performance of 53%, more or less, whereas the individual buildings have an energy performance of 88%. That's because the centralized building is focused on user profile and user behavior and a standard user behavior, which aims to consume, which is calculated at a standard consumption. And when we have low consumptions, the energy performance of the centralized system is really low. So that's it. So what we saw is really low consumptions among all the building stock. Problems, well, that's what I have to say, is that the domestic hot water consumption was sometimes even higher than the national average. And so in buildings, for example, in this specific case study where we are studying now, we saw that more than 53% of the dwellings were under 17 degrees during the cold season. So that's, I mean, I don't know if this answers your question, and it's an average data.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think you commented that it can get really very cold in Victoria, similar temperatures to Lille in north of France. Just have you been able to look at how tenants have benefited from the improvements, what impact it's had on their life, their quality of life? Have you been able to carry out any research or had any feedback from tenants in this?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, because it was like a...
Sorry, have you had any feedback from tenants on the benefits of these improvement programs?
So, so these measures are now taking place, that are ongoing now. So the feedback is we don't have enough feedback in order to have our good conclusions, but we have been analyzing the data of this is a specific study since December to February of this year. And what we have seen is that there is an increase in the energy consumption. Thus, there is an increase in indoor temperatures. Also, we are, let's say, how do you say, optimizing the centralized system. For example, then now we have low the the heating temperature of the water. And we haven't had any problems with any of the tenants, and they are really happy with the program, because we are paying this energy until 18 degrees.
So, Inigo, there's a question specific for you from Jose Carlos, who asks about he refers to the next generation of EU funds as an opportunity to address the inefficiency costs of the buildings with the worst energy performance. The direction, he asked about what direction the different governments should be pressured or persuaded so that green transition funds contribute to reducing households' bills, particularly those on low incomes and in buildings with poor performance. So this is very much about what you think national government policy should be.
Yeah, but only the last phrase, I think I didn't reach to to express myself. When you are dealing with a low-income household, in the end, you don't reduce the bill of those dwellings, because the low-income household, they are consuming so low energy quantities that in the end, when you renovate the building, or when you renovate the heating system or whatever, the energy bills of those dwellings, they are really the same. There is not a big difference between the energy bills ex ante and ex post, or before and after the renovation. So in the end, when you are trying to implement energy efficiency measures in buildings where a low-income household live, you have to assume that you are not going to recover the money. The economic viability is going to be quite bad. But also, I'm saying to the second question, that for example, with the project that Pablo explained, if we achieve to reach a higher temperature, a higher indoor temperature, then you are supposed to have less health issues. You are supposed to have a better social life and more better capabilities to work and more. Many other side effects that they are not directly related to the energy bills, but you can recover some money from the health system or whatever. So you don't know how to, in the second question, well, they ask whether we have to measure differently the return on investment. Well, not measure differently, but include more things in the return on investment, such as health or well, many others. So I think if we are speaking about the renovation wave, also in the Clean Energy for All and the winter package, the European Commission said that nobody should be left behind. So I think here the European Commission has some arguments to include in those renovations. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think that sort of segs into some questions to Roberto, because Inigo referred to the health benefits and so on that also accrue from energy efficiency. So I just wondered, when you looked at the benefits of the different packages of measures, whether you also considered some of these other benefits of energy efficiency, such as impact on health, or is that something you might be able to look at in the future?
So for now, we didn't take into account all the benefits not related directly with energy, but I think it's a good work for the future. And for instance, for example, the National Strategy for Energy Renovation in the building sector from Spain estimates that retrofitting could generate between 33,000 to 88,000 jobs over the strategy period. And this will be something like 0.4% of increase in the projected employment. So it's a very good increase for employment at the national scale. But also, they point out, in the same strategy, point out some good health impact, because Jim say that if we retrofit by 2030, 1.2 million homes, that is around the 6% of the Spanish building stock, we can prevent 80,000 people considering themselves sick or in very poor health. And also we can prevent around 100,000 people that is being diagnosed with, for example, cardiovascular problems that is really connected with bad efficiency. And also they quantify in around 400 euros per house the health labor costs that can save applying these measures. So we didn't include it in our study, but we know a lot of several studies in Spain that point out these good benefits, and we look forward also to include that in future work.
Similarly, Roberto, I was interested that one of the improvement measures that Inigo referred to was the installation of heat pumps, but I think you have particular views on the role heat pumps can play in tackling energy poverty. So could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, because we are hearing a lot about electrification of heating and domestic outdoor services, but we're not thinking about how we can apply these measures on vulnerable houses, with people who don't have high income or just medium income. They're low income people. So, for example, we analyzed in the feasibility of centralized heat pumps in Spain. We did this study for different climate zones, because it's different also depending on the climate zones. And for example, for Madrid, we found out that, of course, the heat pumps has a much better performance in terms of efficiency and CO2 emissions with respect of the current technology, for example, the gas boiler. But from the vulnerable households point of view, we also see the economical feasibility of the heat pumps. And we point out that we need financial schemes or funding from private or public. Both of them are valid. And also to be really economical feasible, they have also to benefit from the social tariff for electricity, because the electricity price we studied for 2019, the electricity price was very high for Spain, and is much higher than, for example, the natural gas price. So when we compare with the gas boiler case study, we saw that actually the variable cost that is connected with energy price is much lower in the case of centralized gas boiler. And so it makes it an affordable place with respect to heat pumps. But if we currently apply the social tariff and also fund these measures as heat pumps, we can actually apply it to vulnerable households.
Right, thank you. I mean, I know heat pumps and the installation of, I mean, there's certainly an expectation of a high rate of installation in the UK. It's become a very topical issue about their suitability. Inigo, did you want to comment at all on the role heat pumps could play?
Yeah, only one funny thing that it's when you have to use a boiler running on gas, and you also need your electricity for the mobile or whatever. You have to contract two different tariff, one electricity and another one gas. And if you have a heat pump, you only have to contract one the electricity tariff. So in the end, for low-income household, this is what we saw in Alokabide, in the Barce social landlord. It's better to have only one contract than the two different contracts, because you are saving one of the fixed terms of the tariff. So this is one of the benefits. And well, it's true that what Roberto said, that in Spain perhaps the weather is not so good for heat pumps, but in Alokabide, and Pablo can also speak about the system running on the buildings of Alokabide. They already have quite many heat pumps combined with geothermal and well, many other different systems, and they are doing quite well. So I think it's not a problem. Even in the new buildings projected by Alokabide, they are only thinking of electricity and heat pumps. So I think it's really the future. So.
I mean, I guess the takeaway is that different solutions are appropriate, that in different areas of the country and so on. I wondered perhaps if we could move on to some questions from Miguel. I mean, it looks a really interesting tool that could be really useful for people carrying out energy efficiency. But I just wondered if you have any thoughts about how you can make it accessible to low-income consumers, particularly those who are not competent in using IT, are obviously often facing many immediate pressures on their time and so on. Whether sort of energy advisors might be able to use a tool to support them. I have a specific question related to that from Rodrigo Feli, who's he's found that a number of energy poverty related issues which could have benefited from the technical measures that GreenMenu provides guidance on. So how is it aiming to reach sort of potential technicians and partners, contractors, and so on?
Okay, so I think for the first question, I think it's having the information available and easily understandable. It's a good start, but for the hardest to reach segment of consumers, of citizens, it's not enough, because with information alone, they will not be activated, let's say, because also energy illiteracy is a big problem. And I believe there's a large segment of the Portuguese population, and in here I include households, low income, but also middle income, and also some small and medium enterprises, that they are actually very hard to reach, and they don't have the time, they don't have the background knowledge to go to the GreenMenu and to see the information and then take the next steps. So I think that's an important question. And for these segments, more actions are needed. We need actual personal counseling, live counseling within the community, within the neighborhoods. Also more financing, because the financing that's available, a lot of it is not directed to these more complicated segments. And in some cases, this general assistance, it will need to go beyond energy related issues, because to more social, to more general assistance, let's say. To the question about advisors, I see in the energy advisors and in the companies that work in these fields, I see that they can use our menu as a showcase to their clients or to their communities, where they can show, okay, we have these measures, they are well described here in a comprehensible language. You can use some calculation tools that are available to get a first estimate about the costs and about the savings. So I see it as a a good first step in the interaction. And on our side, we also look forward to have more information on the implementation phase so that people can go to the platform and they can understand what are the steps to be taken, what are the companies, even the partners of the platform, of the one-stop shop, the trusted partners. And I think that's a good way to bridge the gap between what's online and what's really done in the field near people houses.
I think you've mentioned that you have plans for further developments of the menu. So and I know you referred to the fact that it provides information on financial packages and so on. So I have no much idea of what sort of financial package exists in Portugal, and whether there are any specifically, for people on low incomes to help them improve their. But could you say a bit more about, your plans for further developing the menu and whether there's, ways of sort of flagging up the sort of support that could be made available for energy poor households?
Yeah. So regarding the financing schemes that we have available in Portugal, there are quite a few, from soft loans, from grants and tax incentives. But I believe none of these are directly targeted to support building retrofitting in low-income households or even in some middle-income households. Because, for example, the grant program, first, the funding was too small for what's necessary. And second, it requires upfront cash. So a lot of people are not able to provide this upfront cash, and especially vulnerable consumers, and especially those in energy poverty. So it's a good instrument, but it leaves out a significant portion of the population. And the government also is speaking about creating some vouchers for energy poor people, but this is still undefined, and we need to see how it will work in reality. It seems a good idea to give cash up front for a selected number of families, but the details are still very scarce. Regarding the second question about future developments for the menu, we are looking to expand the building typologies, because right now we have one residential building typology from Lisbon. It's nice to look at, but I believe that if we had, for example, multi-apartment buildings from the 80s, which are also a very important segment in Portugal, and in some cases their performance is even worse than those older buildings. So I think it will be interesting also to continually update with more information, for example, on new financing schemes, for example, on regulations that may change. And we are also looking forward to have more information on the implementation phase. So, for example, to redirect to a list of approved companies that can work, that can implement retrofitting measures, that can install solar PV, for example, so that we have a more direct counseling that goes beyond just saying, okay, there are these measures, they are nice, but okay, this is how you go step by step to implement them in your house.
Thank you. Sarah, we had you waiting around for quite a long time. Just some questions for you. We've had one from Catherine Mahoney, who worked on a government retrofit program in the UK, found that the initial timelines for the project underestimated the time necessary to build up trust in the community. And this meant that the project had to be extended several times to address this. She wonders if you've come across similar issues with retrofit programs I think specifically in, I think you focus on Victoria, rather than Australia as a whole. But if you can comment on Australia as a whole, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, I guess speaking to the interviews we've done, yes, trust is a really important aspect of, I guess, retrofit that speaks to, I think, the importance of trusted intermediaries in the sort of provisioning and process. And also, the trust is interesting because I guess there's sort of the social network side of trust as well. So householders are getting their, you know, trusted advice from lots of different people, from their family and friends to intermediary organisations that are rolling out retrofit programs for vulnerable households, to, you know, state government and that sort of thing. So, and then it's also, trust is also informed by experience of tradespeople coming into their homes, and so bad experiences there, but also their relationship with their plumber or their electrician, which might then really inform the retrofit activity that they do, but whether that particular tradesperson has the sort of specific knowledge and competencies, I guess, to be passing on that the best information. So I think trust is really important to kind of think about and how we deliver and the governance of retrofit.
Yeah. Do you see sort of public agencies playing an important role in this respect?
Yeah, I think so. I think I guess everybody trusts different different organizations differently, I guess, and everybody is so unique. And I think that's something that's coming out in the research, is that everybody's experience is different. So how we then roll out retrofit programs and think about scaling them up is, it's, you know, there are really diverse experiences out there. So we can't just say, well, everybody who lives in, say, social housing has had this experience. It's not necessarily that simple. But yeah, so I think public agencies do play a really important role. And yeah, I mean, in Victoria, we have sort of the local government, and then we have state government, and then there's federal government, and not much is happening at the federal government level in terms of retrofit or energy poverty, but the state government and local government are sort of, I guess, key actors in framing the discussion around retrofit, but also, yeah, in building trust in terms of that this is a good thing to do to your these are good improvements to make. They, you know, there are options to make them more affordable for you and all that sort of thing. So, and that you don't have to live in a cold home, you know, or you don't have to just heat one room of your house, that sort of thing. So important messages that I think public agencies can play there.
I mean, in the UK, there's been a big focus on both the health benefits of retrofit, but also the role that health workers can play, because that's generally people do trust their doctor and the district nurse or whoever. And if they can get over that message that you know, cold housing is poor for your health, perhaps, you know, the thinking is they're much more likely to act on that sort of advice. Has that been considered in Australia? And perhaps Roberto, I don't know, when you referred to the health benefits, if that side of it has been looked at. So first, Sarah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think my colleague Nicola Willand would be the best person to answer that, but there hasn't been the focus on health workers as those intermediaries in Australia like the UK. So, and I think, you know, it would be a really good thing to have, but I don't think we've had that focus yet. So,
I mean, yeah. I think the problem is they're using incredibly pressed for time, and everybody sees them as a really useful intermediary to get their messages over and so on. But it has, you know, where health workers have been involved in retrofit, you know, I think as long as, I think the thing they always want to have guaranteed is that, you know, the person they refer for an improvement program does actually get benefit for that program. So,
Yeah.
Roberto, do you have any thoughts on this?
So regarding the health impact of, sorry, what was
I was asking about the potential role health workers could play in encouraging people to take advantage of retrofit measures.
So the increasing of all jobs also, or that in the, or yeah, the things is, then we have to like this, to broad and to take like a bit comprehensive approach to retrofitting. So when we talk about that, we cannot focus only on the, for example, the climate or the carbonization effect or economical effect, but we have to broad that and include all the effect that's, for example, not only in the health, as I told, but also in the social, sociologic effect. Also, the people who live in a more comfortable house are not ashamed to invite, for example, friends in their house. So it's like a loop, it's a positive loop. If you create this positive loop, people in energy poverty can actually be integrated in the society, and not only from an economical point of view, but also in a social point of view.
Thank you. So we've got another question coming back to heat pumps. John Rowlett asks, says in reality, the capex cost for heat pumps is as hard for many owner-occupiers who are not defined as fuel poor as they are who are defined as fuel poor. And do any of the panel members need to feel that we need to take a universal approach for supply, funding and deployment rather than defining groups? That this way, those who are fuel poor are now included in larger social measures by default. So again, a sort of question about the technical aspects of heat pumps, but also about the implications for policy and the role that the implications for deployment of them across all members of society. So I don't know who would like to have a go at that question.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that the capex cost, usually the capex are not affordable also for like medium income people, and it's right that the fact we have to have a universal approach. So, for example, the national strategy are not only focused on vulnerable households, but on the other hand, we have to have a specific plan for these households, because there are people who cannot, for example, many times we cannot access to financial schemes. For example, in talking about another country, Italy, there was the financial scheme called Eco Bonus, and now they improve it. But the Eco Bonus is particularly a bonus that you can access if you declare your income. And there are a lot of people who are that have income or are under the minimum income to declare, and so all these people cannot access to this financial scheme. So we can keep the universal approach because it's very important, because we are talking about decarbonization in all sectors and in all households. But on the other hand, we have to think to more specific funding for people who cannot afford to, for example, install heat pumps, and not now, but not in 2050, if their situation is not improving. So of course, all of this has to be a social and energy sector plans, also to in parallel with the income level of household that should be increased.
Anybody else want to comment on this?
Perhaps me. I understand the thing on the capex cost for average consumer. Yeah, I think when we were speaking, Pablo and I, we were speaking about the heat pumps. We were speaking about social housing landlord. I think it's not the same for an individual consumer. It's completely different for the tenants, because the social housing landlord is making the investment. So it's not the same, but I think it's. I don't agree that it is the same for for a low-income household and a medium income household. I agree that it's also high for average consumer, but for low-income household is enormous. Is the CapEx cost can be infinite, because they are not saving energy. When they renovate the heating system, they are not reducing the the final energy who is going to the dwelling. So if you analyze the economic viability for low income, is always much bigger than anybody else. So I don't agree with that.
No, it's interesting. Somebody commented to me recently that one of their concerns is that a lot of people, the main heating that people in the UK have is gas central heating, and a lot of energy poor, cope with energy poverty by only having heating on for 1 or 2 hours a day. For instance, when the kids go to school or come back from school and so on. And heat pumps doesn't give anything like that same degree of control over the heating. Generally, it's, as I understand, it's you have the heating on all the time at a lower output and so on. So, there are big issues that are arising from the move from people from gas central heating to heat pumps, which is going to have to be addressed. And as you say, given that a lot of people want to consume. Can we go back to Sarah? And perhaps this relates to social housing. I think what I was struck by from your presentation is, again, social housing. I think this is similar to Spain, isn't it? Or Portugal, that social housing is actually quite a small tenure. But there are some really interesting projects to really sort of trailblazing projects to improve social housing or to build new social housing with very low energy demands. And I just wondered if any thoughts on whether the experience of social housing providers could be shared, or how that might be disseminated to other tenures.
Yeah, thanks, William. So you're right that the social housing is a very small proportion of the dwellings in Australia. So we've got about, I think it's 2.5 million rented dwellings, and so that's, and just 3% of those are social housing. And yeah, I guess here it's split between government owned and community housing. So, but I guess to go back to your question, I think, yes, social housing providers, and Travis has been doing a bit of work on this. So he can also speak to this in his session tomorrow, perhaps. But I guess social housing providers have opportunity to use sort of economies of scale to deliver retrofit and engage a wide range of industry stakeholders. So they have unique experiences that they can then share with others. But the sort of tricky thing about sharing that experience and knowledge, I guess, is that the vast majority of rental properties in Australia are owned by individuals in Australia. So it's yeah, with a very small percent of those owning 2 or more properties. So it's an interesting challenge in terms of it's sort of not about sharing across between sort of social housing managers and the sort of individual mum and dad investors who've got their rental property that they're renting out. It's kind of very different. But I guess it is really important to share their learnings. And, you know, social housing organisations are likely to be working to sort of tight budgets. They're likely to have good understanding of the private sector, can do things cost effectively, but it's an interesting thing in terms of how you get that knowledge transfer, I guess. Yeah.
Inigo or Pablo, do you have any thoughts on this?
The thing is that, for example, in the low carbon regulation, the low carbon laws, they have an impact in private rental. They, for example, Catherine, she studied the issue in Germany because I think all around Europe, in every country, you can find a different type of social housing, private rental. But Spain is a country of owners, so everybody is trying to buy a house. It's not the same in Germany. They have a lot of rental, but it's mainly private rental. And due to the low carbon regulations, they have what Catherine and others, they say the low carbon gentrification. After a house is renovated, then the tenant has to leave because the rent increases due to the better performance of the house. So it's a problem. I think for social housing, social tenants, they have an advantage. They can get more benefits from fundings, and not really the tenants, but the social housing providers. So they have more fundings and many other things, but it's an issue in the private rental. So yeah.
So Pablo, yes, there's a specific question to you. Sorry, I just have to go back. So I missed this earlier. I think it was, I'm trying to find it, but
yeah, I can see it here.
It's about the different, how tenants get to choose the different levels of energy consumption. So yes, could you?
Yeah, so I'm watching here the question, and I don't know, maybe they misunderstood me. What I meant about that the tenants are able to choose their level of comfort, I was meaning the indoor conditions. As Inigo said, we are analyzing retrofitting since the point of view of a public landlord. So the investments are going to be carried out by the public landlord. That's not an issue of the tenant. But as I said before, also this refurbishment plan is working on 3 axes. One of these axes is the energy efficiency improvement. Another axis is the indoor conditions improvement, and another axis is the management system improvement. So my project I'm talking now is about this third axis, is talking about improvement of the management system. And what we're trying to do is to change the way we tackle down energy poverty in our association. So instead of a specific aid in kind or these sort of things, we are trying to guarantee a minimum of 18 degrees, which will be paid by the tenants within the fixed term. And if one tenant wants to be at 21 degrees, 23 degrees, whatever, they will be able to increase the indoor temperatures with the thermostat of their dwellings. So what we are currently having in these past three months that we have been developing the project the problems we have been finding is that we are having problems with how to disaggregating or counting one consumption and the other. So that is the most difficult point of this new management system. But once we tackle this problem, I think it's going to be a really good way of assuring interconditions to tenants.
Right, just we probably need to start drawing this to a close, but one sort of final question perhaps to all the panelists from Caroline Porto Valente, which says, you touched on the point that initial investments on energy efficiency retrofits for social housing were not returned in the long term. In other cases, households cannot afford to undertake the retrofit themselves. Do panel members think we should start redefining or measuring differently the return on investment to promote decarbonisation? So who wants to have a stab at that first?
Maybe I can start. I would also like to comment a bit on the social housing situation in Portugal.
Sure.
It actually fits the question, but it also fits the previous one. So in Portugal, we also have only around 2% of social housing, and but it's mostly concentrated on the large cities. So in these cities, there are some pockets of social housing, and often these are the worst performing buildings with the worst living conditions. So, and they are owned by the state, and sometimes the maintenance, the landlord doesn't keep the building in conditions, but they are also an opportunity because since it's a single owner, we believe that it's easier to implement comprehensive retrofitting measures that have maybe they don't pay for themselves in decarbonization or in economic terms, in energy consumption, but the social benefits will be enormous because these are pockets of poverty, of inequality, and to address the buildings is not enough maybe, but it's a very good first step to make these communities better and to empower these people. So I believe, yeah, the different returns on investment, on health, on social justice are the most important parts.
Anybody else want to come on this? I guess primarily it's about, you know, how we measure or rethink investment in decarbonisation so that it can better address these wider benefits in terms of tackling inequalities.
So maybe I would like to point out something that we found out during our energy audits. That the truth is that the buildings we analyze are currently nearly zero energy buildings because of the low consumptions. So when we studied the cost optimal retrofitting measures, we found that because of the investment is done by the public landlord, of course the returning payback period is good for the public landlord, and it wouldn't be enough good if it was done by the particular tenants. But the truth is that now we have or in the future we will have nearly zero energy buildings, but assuring comfort level for the tenants, because now the energy efficiency of the building is really good. It has been really improved because of these retrofitting measures. So we should not think only about the payback period, but improving the indoor conditions of the tenants. Thank you.
I might jump in. Yeah. So I guess I think, you know, the return on investment is pretty clear in terms of the sort of the discussion around it, but I guess it's the upfront costs that can be challenging, particularly in Australia. So I think part of it is around framing the debate, just that your house can be warmer, and there are opportunities to do this, and programs to help you and funding to help you and that sort of thing. So part of it is messaging around that, and also just it's hard if you live in a cold home. It can be, I guess, difficult to know what a warm home is like. So you know, the insulation does actually help if you can put that in. But just going back to social housing, I guess, and what you maybe were alluding to before, William, is that it is a really, I think, important experimental kind of niche level space to you know, test out different approaches and then try and kind of scale that up. So yeah, anyway, some thoughts.
No, thank you. Roberto, did you want to say anything on this?
Yeah, connected with the chat we had like a few minutes ago. I think we have to rethink about how we measure investment costs, and in this case, the return of the investment. So we don't have to focus on only the economical point of view, because we know that, for example, in Spain, in some part of Spain, is not economically feasible to, for example, to retrofit in vulnerable households. Also because we have a low energy demand and in heating, for example. And so we can see it's not, we don't have as much saving as in the northern countries. But on the other hand, if we internalize the externalities of the measures, so we try to add also the health cost we are avoiding, but also as we say, the job we are creating, but also the mental health of people who are living in that building, because people who are living cold in winter, even if they are in very mild winter, we can see as in the last winter we had a very big cold wave in Spain, and so we weren't prepared for that. A lot of people were very cold during the heat and this cold wave, and these have also mental health problems in that are added to the normal health problem we know, and a lot of people started interconnection of being in a cold home with other health problem, respiratory problem, or cardiovascular problem. So we have to manage to don't think only economically, but think much broadly.
Thank you. I think that's a very apt point to finish this discussion on. Yes, it is really important that when we think about decarbonisation policies, and particularly those that focus on the energy poor, that we too take into account all these wider social benefits that can accrue, providing that they're targeted and made effective. Can I thank all the panel for really interesting presentations and discussions? Can I thank all the participants for their questions to the panel? Please carry on, attend future sessions. Watch a video gallery there's some great presentations there. I look forward to perhaps meeting you in person someday in the future. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, William, and thank you to all the attendees.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, same. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you all.